All right, today we're doing a masterclass on a single piece of legislation that really fundamentally reshaped the UK's entire energy landscape. I'm talking about the Utilities Act 2000. This is the law that dictates how gas and electricity get to your home, and more importantly, how the giants of the industry are held to account. And it all kicks off with one single, really powerful number.
10%. Now, that's not a profit margin. It's not some efficiency target. No, that is the maximum financial penalty a UK energy regulator can just slap on a multi-billion-pound company for breaking the rules. We're talking about fines that can easily run into the hundreds of millions. So that's the big question, right? How on earth can a regulatory body wield that kind of power? Well, the answer is baked right into the architecture of the Utilities Act 2000, and that is exactly what we are going to unpack today. Okay, so first up, let's talk foundations. The Act basically started by tearing down the old system and building something completely new. It created a single, powerful energy watchdog. So before the year 2000, regulation was totally split. You had one director for gas and a completely separate one for electricity. The Act just swept them both away. And in their place, it established one single unified body, the Gas and Electricity Markets Authority, or as you'll hear me call it, GEMA. And listen, this wasn't just a rebranding exercise. Not at all. The Act mandated a complete transfer of power. We're talking all the functions, all the property, all the rights, and even the legal liabilities of the old directors, they were all consolidated under GEMA. What this did was create a true super regulator, one with a complete bird's-eye view of the entire energy market. So you've got this new, powerful body in place. What was its mission? What was its purpose? Well, the Act embedded a core philosophy, a principled objective that was meant to guide every single one of its actions. And the clarity here is it's striking. The very first objective stated in the law is to protect the interests of consumers, not to maximize profits for companies, not to prioritize shareholders, but to protect you, the end user. Now, this is balanced, where it's appropriate, by promoting effective competition, working on the principle that, a competitive market is ultimately what serves consumers best. And the Act goes even deeper than that. It explicitly commands the Secretary of State and the authority to have special regard for the interests of these specific groups. This means that when GEMA makes a decision, it legally has to consider the impact on the disabled, on the elderly, on people with low incomes, and on folks living out in rural areas. It's consumer protection, but with a real conscience baked in. Okay, so we have a powerful regulator with a clear, consumer-focused mission. But how does it actually control the market day to day? How does it work? Well, the answer is through a really strict and very specific licensing system. You can think of it like a set of driver's permits, You can't just operate in the electricity market. You need a specific license for each thing you do. There's a generation license for creating power, a transmission license for the massive national grid, a distribution license for the smaller local networks that bring it to your town, and finally, a supply license for the company that actually sends you the bill. And the same kind of logic applies to gas, which needs licenses for transportation and for supply. Now, this is absolutely crucial. The Act puts up a firewall. It clearly states that the same company cannot hold both a distribution license and a supply license. This prevents the company that physically owns the local wires and pipes from also being the only company that can sell you the energy that flows through them. It's a foundational rule, and it's designed to make sure there's a competitive marketplace right down to the local level. So we've got the watchdog, we've got the mission, and we've got the rules. But what happens when companies break those rules? This is where the Act gives the regulator its teeth. So the authority is empowered to set what are called standards of performance. Individual standards cover specific interactions, like how quickly a company has to fix a fault at your home. Overall standards look at their performance across the board. And here's the key part. If a company fails to meet an individual standard that affects you, they might be required to pay you compensation directly. It's a system that links corporate failure directly to a consumer remedy. And that brings us right back to where we started. For really serious breaches of their license conditions, GEMA has the power to impose that massive penalty, up to 10% of the company's annual turnover. This is the ultimate deterrent. It's a financial punishment so significant that it ensures even the biggest players have to follow the rules that were designed to protect you. The Act wasn't just about rearranging the market as it was back then. It was actually remarkably forward-thinking, and it contained provisions to push the UK toward a much more sustainable energy system. The key mechanism here was the introduction of something called the renewables obligation. And this wasn't just a suggestion or a vague target, it was a legal duty. The act gave the Secretary of State the power to order electricity suppliers to get a specific and increasing percentage of their power from green sources like wind, solar, and hydro.
This is just a fantastic example of how policy can literally create a market. See, every unit of renewable electricity generated creates a green certificate. Suppliers had to buy enough of these certificates to prove they'd met their legal obligation. And just like that, you have a new revenue stream for renewable generators, which drives investment in clean energy. And at the same time, the Act also enabled energy efficiency obligations to encourage suppliers to help customers use less energy, kind of tackling the problem from both ends.
So, finally, with all this power consolidated into one single regulator, how do we make sure the watchdog itself remains accountable? Well, the Act built in its own transparency mechanisms to do just that. GEMA is required to publish two key documents. Each year, it has to release a forward work program, which is basically them telling the public, hey, here's what we plan to do this year and why. Then, at the end of the year, it has to publish an annual report, looking back and reporting to Parliament on its performance and on the general health of the market. It's a constant cycle of public declaration and public accountability. So there you have it, the Utilities Act 2000. It created a powerful, unified regulator with a consumer-first mission. It established the licensing rules of the game, it gave that regulator teeth to enforce them, and it pointed the whole nation towards a greener future. It was a framework designed for its time, but it does leave us with one final big question. As we face the immense challenges of net zero and the climate crisis, is this two-decade-old architecture still fit for the decades to come?